In a world in which no one will cover the goddamn story, you're looking for the outlet that will. This is the conversation you're never going to get anywhere else.
Right.
Okay? So what we know what this is. We call it FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Right? And the idea is that we have to create fear, uncertainty, and doubt around you, but because there was no way of just pretending that video didn't exist, it had to enter the G.I.N, gated institutional narrative. I accept your point. Now I want you just to listen to something which is very tough for me to say. Consider that heroism and sociopathy are adjacent, right? A friend of ours named Andrea, I'm just blanking on her Polish last name for the moment, has a theory called extreme altruism. And her point is that an altruist and a hero and a sociopath are one toggle switch off of each other. And the key question is, when you have this kind of need to shake things up, is it done for the self or is it done for the greater good? And I detect that you actually have a commitment to this that is at a level that is somewhere between heroism and sociopathy, to be blunt. Now, I get it. There are no super tough people who don't crack, don't fold, have their own organization, are willing to fight in the courts. And this is, in part, what you're doing. And you know what? Let's talk about another story you covered, which I was brought in before, I believe you were brought in, which was a Google insider. Mm-hmm. Now, can we use that person's name?
Yes.
Let's do it.
Zach Voorhees.
Okay. So Zach Voorhees was talking to me about all the stuff that was going on at Google. And he showed me things like screenshots and programs about ML fairness, machine learning fairness, and how Google was going to bias search by unbiasing it. You know, that he didn't say those words, but that was my encapsulation of it. Mm-hmm. And I did not know how to help him directly. And what you're saying is true. In a world in which no one will cover the goddamn story, you're looking for the outlet that will. And that's what happens repeatedly. And it's not just with you. Fox News, Breitbart, you will cover stories that go counter narrative to this mainstream left of center tradition or narrative, right? And so, for example, as you know, when my brother was driven out of his college where he was a professor by racist students calling his anti-racism racism, that was so completely bizarre for something like the mainstream media that you had effectively a black-led Maoist uprising with a white sort of ultra-woke president against an anti-racist behaving in an anti-racist fashion, being called a racist. That story was so destructive to woke ideology that the New York Times couldn't cover it. And so my brother ended up where? At Fox News with Tucker Carlson. So once you understand that there's sort of this weird rule, which is if all of us pretend that thing isn't happening, then the idea is no one has to cover it, no one has to discuss what it is. And the only places that it appears are right of center. And then each of these right of center weakenings in the crust, think of the crust as the disc, right? You have a narrative which is everything on Fox News is bullshit. Everything that Breitbart prints is crap. Everything that comes out of Project Veritas is unfairly edited and is an unethical piece of dreck. Okay. You're not helping when you go into your self-justification mode about, well, we have to do this. I mean, you may have to do this, but what you first have to do is to exhaust all the things that both serve the ends of informing the public where they need to be informed and minimizing the damage to humans unless those humans really deserve the damage. So let me just try to get at that. My contention is anytime you move private life into the public sector, it appears bizarre and is incredibly damaging. We are supposed to appear here as if we always put on sport jackets and button-down shirts, let's say, and conduct ourselves, in this kind of weird mannered interaction, which is in some sense forced. Now, for example, I love fart jokes. Just love them. Do you like fart jokes?
I'm not too familiar with fart jokes.
Well, for example, there's a fantastic, really long limerick called The Farter from Sparta. May I say the first? Yeah. There once was a fellow from Sparta, a truly magnificent farter. On the strength of one bean, he'd blow God Save the Queen and Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. And it goes on and on.
I like that.
Right? It's really quite good. Now, the problem is that when I talk about fart jokes in public, it's like, wow, Eric, you're doing potty humor? Nice. Classy. Stay classy. Anytime I move private life into the public sector, it's destructive. And that's why it's not just about the written rules. It's also, we talk about in Judaism, the written Torah, and we talk about the oral Torah. Mm-hmm. And I believe that your lawyers know what the rules are for recording conversations in public places, semi-public places, whether the door is open and closed, one-sided or two-sided consent, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And the idea is it varies from state to state. And the average person, their idea of these rules is zero. They're completely ignorant of the law. So the key question is, don't we as Americans have an oral Torah, an idea of what one shouldn't be doing that goes along with the written rule? And you tend to get alerted to this when somebody says that something is perfectly legal. That's the phrase that alerts you to the fact that they're usually violating the oral Torah rather than the written Torah, is that they say perfectly legal rather than merely legal. And I'm concerned that what you're doing is perfectly legal and overkill with respect to the individuals, and it's killing your ability to actually stick it to the institutions who need to be policed and that you're set up to police.